All right, so we are in Proverbs 1 tonight, and I want you to notice the first couple of verses. It says, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom and justice and judgment and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. In tonight's message, I mainly want to preach to our graduates, and I understand that they are young ladies, but the book of Proverbs, it's written to, it appears to me that it is written to a young man, that this is a father. When you're reading these Proverbs and the way it's written, the specific details and the instructions that he's given, it feels like this is something that Solomon, I can just picture in my mind, he sees a young man that's becoming a man, and he is hoping to give him some wisdom and advice to help him continue doing good. And as parents, we do not have a philosophy in this church of let's just keep the kids alive until they're 18 and then we're done. No, we actually want to raise them in a way where they will go and they will continue living for the Lord. They will continue following the things that we've taught them. That's our goal. And the reality is, for the graduates, the biggest decisions of their life are probably going to be made in the next 5 years. The impact of these decisions will impact the rest of their lives. And these years coming up is where we as parents, we start to find out how good of a job we did. They had to take some final tests to see how they did on their schooling and on their education, how much they paid attention. And we're about to start seeing the grade on how we did as parents raising our kids. And that can be a scary thing, but if you did things right, if you put in the proper work, you should be excited about it at the same time too. And so we're going to find out. And even if overall you did the right thing, the simple fact is, as parents, while a lot of it was on us, now there's kind of a transition taking place where it's not so much about what you do anymore, it's about what they do. They are going to start making decisions. They are going to start making choices. And it's about to become more on you as graduates as far as the decisions you make. Where you are today, it's mainly because of your parents. But where you're going to end up, while they have played a big part in that, ultimately, it's going to be on you. And the reality is, you're to a point now where one mistake, one bad choice, one foolish decision, it can actually undo years of work that your parents did. When you're little, you can only do so much damage. Typically, the damage you do when you're little is physical. You break things. You break your arm. You break windows and things like that. That's the extent. But when you start getting older, man, just one bad decision, can really just change your life in a negative way. And when our children when they're younger, we do, as parents, we make every decision for them, from what they wear, to what they eat, to when they get up, to when they go to bed. It's all on you, parents. You're the one who makes all of those decisions. You're the one that decides all of those things. And as your kids get older, they should start becoming more independent. And hopefully, you don't have to tell them everything to do. Even though you're grown, you still, graduates, you still shouldn't be eating junk food all the time. If you have, and you're going to have opportunity. Parents aren't going to be around necessarily to tell you, staying up super late, watching TV all day. You shouldn't still need to be told to brush your teeth. These things, you ought to be doing you're on your own. And as a father, too, who's trying to prepare my children to become adults, it's always my desire to make less of their decisions and to not constantly be telling them what to do. You want to know the reason a lot of parents fail, or their kids just completely change everything when they become adults, is the parent never taught their kid or even allowed them to make any decision. They're like, well, my kids did great when they were in my home, but then they did terrible as soon as they left. Not my fault. Well, maybe you should have allowed a bit of transition where you started letting them make decisions. So you could start watching and seeing if you have a wise son or a wise daughter, or if you have a foolish son or a foolish daughter. It's not all about obviously, okay, I shouldn't have to say this, but obviously, parents, you're in charge. Parents, you're the boss. Parents, what you say goes. However, I recommend that you start letting your kids make some decisions. Why? so you can observe, so you can critique if you need to, so you can instruct. And some people, they hit a certain age and they've never made any decision. They've been so sheltered in their life, they've never even been tempted to do anything. And then all of a sudden, they're perfect little angels up until they're 18. They leave the house and then they turn into devils in the matter of 6 months. What happened? They never got tested. They never built any character. You never gave them a chance to do anything. And so we do. As parents, when you start seeing those kids grow up, if they make good choices, it's comforting. It brings that joy when you see that. And our haters out there, they're always constantly accusing us of saying things like parents don't have the right to spank their teens or anything like that. But listen, I have for years tried to teach that you shouldn't need to. That the goal is just like, yes, as long as my children are in my home, I am the boss. But at the same time, because I know they're not always going to be in my home, I want them to start making decisions. I want to see what they do. I'm going to allow some things because I want to prepare them to go out and do their own thing and to make and hopefully make the right choices. And the same thing too. Obviously, when it comes to spanking, that's something they ought to grow out of. Okay? I mean, I cannot give you a Bible verse on when you can't technically spank your kids anymore. Actually, I probably could when they leave the house. But at the same time, if you're spanking your 20-year-old, my hope for his future is not looking real good. I don't expect good things. Everybody likes to tell the story about John R. Rice when he spanked his daughter the day before her wedding. And that's a story I've heard before. I don't know if that's a preacher story or a true story. But at the same time, everybody likes to tell that story. And therefore, you can, listen, if you need to, I feel sorry for that girl's husband. When she's in her 20s and she still needs spanked by her dad. I mean, have you failed that bad as a parent? And so if the only thing I can do to get my 17-year-old to brush their teeth is to spank them, I personally think things aren't going real well in my parenting. I think we've got a big problem. And there are telltale signs of failure out there. And again, needing to spank your 16 or 17-year-old is one of them. If that's the only thing you can do to get them to listen. Because pretty soon, they're just going to figure out, hey, I can leave the house. I don't have to live with mom and dad anymore. And then the only thing that's going to get them to behave, our government's not cruel enough to spank people. Our government's not cruel enough to take people out in the public square and lay lashes on them. So typically when our people get out of control, cops just shoot them. Because we're too humane to do all those other things. So we just let the cops shoot them or tase them. And the reality is that's probably what they're going to need. And it's a shame, but that's where we are in a lot of places. And so there's many things we could talk about for young adults from Proverbs, but I mainly want tonight, I just want to stick with chapter 1. And as we read this, I want you to think of this, again, as a father giving instructions, in this case to a son who's about to become an adult. And it is, as a parent, you freak out a little bit sometimes as you start to realize, wait a minute, I'm losing control, I'm losing power. And it is when I no longer am to the place in my family where I have total control of my children. I'm not there anymore. I have 2 of them that are out of the house. And one that's married, one that's getting married next week. And they go places and they do things and they don't even ask. Tommy and Jenna, they're always traveling all over the country. They don't ask my permission if they go to these places. They don't, I just find out they're going. And the reality is, that's how it should be. And I'm okay with that. And, thankfully, I don't have to give him. Now, his mom still tries to give instructions. She's always, when he sends pictures of places where they're at and hiking and stuff, she's always telling him not to fall off cliffs and things like that, as if he needs to be told. And she's always getting scared by things. Moms never get over those things. But the simple fact is, if he does, if she is worried about him doing something completely stupid to destroy his life, the reality is the time to do something about that was when he was in our house. Now we just have to deal with the consequences of our parenting. And so far, we're happy. So far things are going good. And so let's start going through Proverbs. And I want to point out some things, because notice in verse 3, he says to receive the instruction of wisdom and justice and judgment and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. And right here, Solomon, he's given a reason for what he's writing, and he's explaining what he hopes to accomplish with it. I'm writing these things because I want you to have some knowledge and discretion, because as a parent, you can't possibly tell your child everything they are going to deal with. You can't possibly tell them every single scenario and what they need to do in that situation. You can't do that. There's too many unique things that we face in life. However, if you can instill wisdom in them, whenever they face those unique situations that they face, they will know what to do. They will make good choices. And so the reality is, it's not about helping them figure out a list of do's and don'ts and when can I do this and when can I not do this. It's just about having wisdom. And if you have wisdom, you will make good decisions. You will be able to figure these things out. As parents, we understand those challenges they're going to face. Every situation is unique. Every child is unique in their own way. But if they will receive wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity, they will do good. Again, when they are young, we get to dictate and micromanage what they do. But when they get older, it's not only is that just going to be too difficult to do, but it isn't helpful. When your kids start getting driver's license, they leave the house, and I guess Cassandra has Life 360 for the girls and things like that, but we don't know everything they're doing. They could get away with a lot of stuff. You're like, well, we just can't have that. So you know what? Our kids are never going to be allowed to leave the house. Well, that'll keep them out of trouble for those 18 years. But eventually, they're going to leave the house. And the reality is, it's probably better to give them a little bit of freedom and see what they do with it. And if they do good, if they make good decisions, if they're being wise, let them have a little more freedom. And that's a good thing you can tell your kids as they start getting older. Dads, as your boys start getting older, they are naturally going to become more independent. And that's not a bad thing. They're naturally going to want to venture out and do other things. That's not them being rebellious. That's them becoming grown up. That's them becoming men. As they grow up, you're going to start butting heads a little bit. It's not him being rebellious when at 21 years old, he just doesn't want to do every little thing you say. He's just a rebel. He's just a rebel. No, he's becoming a man. And this is just signs that it's about time for him to get his own place. This is about time that he go and start his own family. That's what it is. And the reality is, if you've got a 30-year-old son and he's just so super submissive and never challenges you on anything, I think there's personally something wrong with him. He should be wanting to get out of there and start his own family. That's the way it's supposed to be. But we don't get to dictate everything as they get older. And so as parents, we've got to let them start making decisions. And even if they choose something that we wouldn't have chosen, we need to ask ourselves too, is this decision actually a harmful decision? Pick your battles wisely, parents. There's going to be a lot of things that your kids are going to want to do. There might be jobs that they want. Oh, I wouldn't want to do that job. Well, they aren't you. I wouldn't want that kind of car. I wouldn't make that choice for this. I wouldn't make that choice for that. Right. That's because it's not you. Yes, when they were growing up, you want to know why we have all these younger kids here, younger boys and younger girls that dress up and match all the time? Because parents are making the decision and it's cute and you love it. But when they start getting older, they don't want to do that anymore. My boys, they wouldn't, I doubt we could get them to wear matching outfits right now. They would feel stupid. They would feel like little kids. That's part of them growing up. So, they wear what they want to wear. And it might not be exactly what we would like them to wear. But did you know that's okay if your kids start making some of those choices on their own? In fact, that's how it's supposed to be. And it's not about how you biblically proving that you can tell your 20-year-old what kind of shoes he has to wear. It's just, no, you ought to be able to let him make those decisions. And he might make choices that are a little different than yours, and it doesn't mean he's wrong. It doesn't mean he's rebellious. It means he's another individual. Let him do these things. Choose your battles wisely. So verse 5 says, and as long as if they have wisdom, they'll be fine. They might be an Apple, customer rather than an Android customer. In fact, I think both my boys are Apple. Are both you guys Apple? Yeah, I didn't raise them to be that way. That's it. I wouldn't have made that decision. I personally think they would have been better to do Android. But, I'm not going to make a stink. I'm not going to kill our relationship over that. I'll make fun of them from the pulpit, but at the same time, I'm not going to fight that battle. I think even Chloe has an iPhone. Do you have one too, Abby? All my kids. Wow. Surprised any of them are still Baptists at this point, the way things are going. But no, that's not really a battle I've chosen to fight. I really don't care about. I think they're all Cub fans, though. Everybody's Cub fans, though, right? Okay, so we haven't completely lost them on these things. But look at what it says in verse 5. It says, a wise man will hear and will increase in learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. To understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise, and their dark sayings. So understand, just because you've graduated from high school, that does not mean you are done learning. If you are wise, you know what you will do? You will increase in learning. And so as I'm thinking about Solomon talking to a young man, a man who is kind of becoming his own person, a man who is now stepping away from his father a little bit and about to start exercising some independence and making some choices on his own, his dad's letting him know, hey, if you're actually wise, you're going to increase in learning. I understand you've hit a certain age, you've hit 18, you've hit 21, whatever, but if you're wise, you're going to keep on learning. You're going to increase in learning. You still have a lot to learn, and just because you got a diploma today does not mean you're done learning. You better believe there are still many things left to learn, and a lot of things you need to learn. And one of the things you need to do, you need to listen to wise counsel. Because I just understand this too. Just because you're an adult, hey, and I'm already preaching to Chloe. I might as well preach to the rest of my kids too. Hey, just because you're an adult and you're not under our authority anymore, it doesn't mean that you should just do. Just because a decision is yours does not mean you should just do whatever you want to do. You should seek counsel. And wise people seek counsel. And understand, as parents, you want to know why a lot of young people don't want to go to their parents for counsel? Because a lot of parents never learn how to make that transition from giving orders to giving counsel. Okay? When your kids were younger, you got to tell them what to do. When they get older, if they ask you what to do, you need to understand that if they don't do what you advise, it's not disobedience. You know why? Because it's not your decision. That's them just seeking counsel, and they might follow it, they might not. But either way, so obviously, once you become an adult, the decisions are yours. Without a doubt, they are yours. And you following the counsel of your parents, of grandparents, of other people, that's not you giving them authority. No, it's your decision. You are the authority, but what you are doing is receiving that counsel. That's just what wise people do. Even presidents will often seek counsel. That's what they're supposed to do. They have people who counsel them in certain things. It's the president's decision. But they understand there are people who maybe specialize in certain areas that know a lot more specifics about how certain decisions will impact things. And so they'll go to these people and they'll say, hey, what do you think? What do you say? And if they have a wise counselor who gives good advice, you know what they'll often do? You know what? I'm going to go with what they say. It's still the president's decision. It's ultimately his responsibility, but a good president, a wise president, is going to seek counsel and he will follow that counsel. And so when your kids were younger, you were able to spank them when they didn't follow your commands. But you know what? When your kids don't follow your counsel, you don't get to do anything. And that includes guilt tripping. Okay? All that's going to do is guarantee they never seek your counsel again. Because if all you're going to do is guilt trip them when they don't do what you said, then they're just not going to seek your counsel anymore. And understand too, if they do seek your counsel and they don't follow your advice and everything blows up, if you shut up and behave yourself and remember it was their decision, next time, guess who they're probably going to listen to? The one who they should have listened to before. So just understand there is a change there. There is a transition. And again, and as your kids start getting older, okay, my daughters that are still in my home, okay, yeah, technically I'm the boss still. I haven't given them to a husband yet, but at the same time, it would be wise for me to, again, sometimes allow them to make decisions and even decide something maybe a little bit different, as long as it's not bad, as long as it's not sinful, as long as it's not harmful. Like I mentioned something about this morning, there can be multiple good choices that are out there. And sometimes you just need to, you need to let people make their decisions. And so, and another thing too for the graduates, just because you've graduated high school or even 18, it doesn't mean you're to this point yet where you can make your own decisions. Okay? But you're getting close. You're getting close. You will start making some decisions. And so you need to start following these things. And remember that. So here's some things to make sure you have with you going forward, and just don't go anywhere without these things. Look what it says in verse 7. So notice what he says here. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. When you were younger, one of the things that got you obeying was a fear of a spanking. It was fear of mom and dad. That was why you listened. You listened so you wouldn't get spanked. And the justice typically came really fast. And it was very obvious. As you get older, it doesn't always happen that way. But I'm telling you right now, if you just always have a healthy fear of God, it will help you make so many good choices. It will keep you from making so many bad choices. If you just fear God, yes, as soon as you get your driver's license, you now have the ability to get away with a lot of stuff. But if you have a fear of God, you know what? You won't do it, because you realize I'll eventually get caught. This will catch up with me, and it will catch up with you. I promise it will catch up. Mom and dad somehow will find out eventually. Just mark it down. Once you start getting things like a cell phone, you have so much more potential to get in trouble. When you turn 18, legally, you have the ability to get in so much more trouble. But if you have a fear of God, you won't. If you just, and never lose that fear of God, because the day is going to come where you don't have to fear your parents anymore. They're not going to be able to do anything to you. They're not going to be able to physically stop you from doing any of these things. If you're smart and if you have a job and you're able to make money, you can go and do your own thing. You can do whatever you want. And mom and dad can't stop you. However, if you have a fear of God, though, that alone, that can keep you from making a lot of very foolish decisions. But notice, fools despise wisdom and instruction. Somebody is still instructing them. And you should be receiving instruction. And understand too, it's kind of an awkward transition from teenager to adult. Because sometimes people still treat you like a kid, and you don't like that. Sometimes people treat you like an adult, and you don't really know how to handle that. It's a very confusing time. But and so a lot of times, this is probably more of a problem with guys. There's kind of an insecurity there, because we got to prove we're a man, so nobody's going to tell us what to do. But did you know that all of us, I've been an adult for a long time, we all still have to receive instruction a lot. You go get a job somewhere, guess what? You're getting instruction all the time. We are always following instructions from someone. Somewhere, somehow, we have to follow instructions from the IRS. We got to follow laws. We are all always being told what to do for something. It's just how it is. It's life. And you don't want to just have this attitude, nobody's going to tell me what to do. No, you should have an attitude, hey, I want to find the right people to give me instruction. I want to find the right people who will tell me what to do, that will lead me in a right way. And I'm going to listen to good counsel. I'm going to love wisdom. I'm going to love instruction. I'm going to love letting other people tell me how things get done, how to do things, because I don't want to mess everything up. I don't want to make a lot of the foolish decisions people are making out there. I want to get things right. So yeah, I'm going to follow instruction. I'm going to love instruction. Always have that fear of God. But a fool, they also don't like rules. But if you're a wise young adult, it will scare you a little bit. It should scare you a little bit, knowing you're not going to be micromanaged anymore. But if you have a fear of God, if you love wisdom, instruction, you're going to be fine. Just fear God. That is the beginning of wisdom. Start out with that. It will make a huge difference. Look what it says in verse 8. It says, my son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. And understand, turning 18 is not your excuse to go experiment on everything your parents never let you do. Well, I'm 18, now I can do these things. I'm 18, the law says now I can smoke. I'm 18, I have all these things I'm able to do now. But listen, if you continue, notice what it says there. When it says, hear the instruction of thy father, forsake not the law of thy mother. I don't believe this is just for a child who's under 18. I think this is telling them, hey, even after you're out of the house, as you're becoming an adult, still follow the things that you were taught. And if you continue enforcing the rules your parents had on yourself, you will stand out from others at your age. Notice how it says, they should be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. You know what? It'll be like bling. All right, we all know what bling is. That gangster that likes to wear all the flashy jewels. What's he trying to do? He's trying to portray riches. Hey, look at me and all my riches. Look at me and my rings and all my bling and all that kind of stuff. Well, the reality is, if you are a young person, if you are a young adult who continues following the things that your parents taught you, you will stand out in a crowd. You will stand out in a good way. People will notice a difference. And I love that. And I think we've already seen examples of that. But people in the world, they notice the young people in this church. The young people in this church, they stand out from the young people in the world. When I first started working at Walmart in Spring Valley, I just turned 20 years old when I started working there. I got married not long after that. We started having kids right away. And so at like 23, I had 2 kids, and I was married, and everybody thought I was in my 30s. And I always thought it was because of my receding hairline. I started getting at a young age. But then I had this one older guy in there telling me, I was like, why does everybody think I'm 30? I'm not that bald. It's like, I'm 23. And he was this older guy. He's like, Tommy, it's not because you're going bald. It's because look at all the other guys out here in their 20s. They're all still partying. A lot of them are still living at home, just acting like idiots all the time. You're married, you have kids, you're responsible. That's why they think you're 30. And then I felt pretty good after that. I was like, I thought it was just because I was going bald. But that's true. If you have some maturity, and if you act like an adult's supposed to act. Let me tell you, folks, 30 is the new 20. And I'm telling you, people in their 20s today it's pretty pathetic. And if you follow these Bible principles, and if you follow the things your parents taught you, everyone's going to notice you in a good way. We've got all these weirdo freaks wanting to stand out today by doing all kinds of weird piercings and tattoos and making their hair do crazy stuff. Hey, you know what? Show wisdom, and you will stand out in the crowd. You will be somebody that people notice in a good way. Potential bosses will notice. Potential spouses will notice. Listen, you guys, you want a good girl, be worthy of it. Girls, you want a good guy, be worthy of it. Follow these instructions, and you will be noticed, especially too, by the potential in-laws. Listen, guys, I know you think you're all that in a bag of chips, but that girl, her parents, if she's a wise one, have a lot of influence on her. And the reality is, typically what I do when boys are interested in my daughters, I make them take me out on a date. You know why? Because, they need to win me over before they're going to win them over. And if they can't win me over, they're not even going to get a chance to win them over. And I still have a lot of influence in my daughter's life because, they're being raised right, because they're making good decisions. And if you want to get a good girl who has wisdom, that girl is probably one who loves her parents and wants to please her parents. And so the reality is, if you're acting like a thug and an idiot and you're just pathetic, that girl's parents are going to be like, yeah, that guy's bad news, and you're not even going to have a chance. I know you think you're that good looking, but trust me, her dad doesn't care. Her dad does not care how good looking you are. That does nothing to influence him. But that wisdom, that says a lot. And so if I may impart some wisdom to all young adults, if you are right and there is nothing wrong with things like drugs, alcohol, tattoos, freakish piercings, all that kind of stuff, why don't you do these things after you get married and have your first child? Because think about it. If it's okay to do all those things right now, it will be okay to do those things when you're married and you have your first child. Now, I'm telling you right now, guys, if you want to go and tat yourself up and do all those kind of things, you're going to freak out a lot of good dads. You really are. So just not doing those things to yourself will give you a much better chance. And I'm here to tell you that I'm pretty convinced if you wait to start drinking, doing drugs, tatting yourself up, piercing yourself up, all those, if you wait until after you have a child, I'm pretty convinced most of you won't even do it after that. Because you know what? There's something about becoming a husband that makes you a little more responsible. And there's also something about having those kids. There's something about those kids that it matures you a little bit. It does something to you. And I'm pretty convinced if you can wait until after, don't wait until 21 to drink. Okay? The world tells you don't drink until you're 21. No, don't do it until you have a wife and a child. And I still don't think you ought to do it after that. But I'm pretty convinced if you can wait until then, if you are so sure it's biblically okay, if you're just 100% sure, you've been listening to some, podcaster, some reform dude, or some trendy out there, and he's convinced you that it's biblical to do that, just wait until you have your first kid. I think it'll change everything. And so I don't want anybody to take their first drink. Or after they have their first child. But if everyone just had the wisdom to wait until they were that far into life, I think that most people wouldn't do it. You know when most people start drinking? You know when most people try drugs and all these things? It's right after high school. You know why? Because you legally have a little more freedom, and you're just as dumb as you were as a teenager. You're still dumb. You don't have life experience yet. And so you need to understand that you're still dumb. And let me just say this too. Okay, I don't have an exact scientific explanation for this, but it is scientific. But guys, especially, there's just something about having a wife and having the physical relationship that helps your brain. It really does. And guys who don't have that are really dumb and make really dumb decisions. It's just a fact. And so if you just had the wisdom to realize how stupid you were before you get married, you would listen to counsel. You would follow other people's advice. And I'm telling you, if you have that kind of wisdom to do things like that, your life's going to do well. You're going to do very well in your life. So verse 10 says, "My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, come with us, let us lay wait for blood, let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as at the grave, and whole as those that go down to the pit." Notice, this is the time of your life where Satan's going to come after you. And Satan typically comes after you through people. And what does it say? If sinners entice thee, consent thou not. Do not listen. And there are many temptations out there. And Satan is going to try to get you experimenting with things that will destroy you. Do not consent. Do not listen to the other drunkards that are out there. Do not listen to the other potheads that are out there and the other fornicators and things that are out there. Do not listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. And folks, there are things. I'm thankful that I was taught morality, and I didn't even know. I was 20 when I got married, and I don't even think it was until long after I was married that I even realized I even had a choice to do wrong after I turned 18, because that's just how I was raised. And I'm glad I didn't do any wrong. I don't even remember really being tempted that much, because there just wasn't a whole lot of opportunity and there wasn't much desire there. But I could tell you some stories that probably wouldn't be completely appropriate from the pulpit of just stuff I remember hearing guys working in a factory say about their lives, people who had no restraints. And I realized very quickly into my marriage that what these men who have no restraints on their life are pursuing and are living for, I had so much better with just having certain restraints in my life. And I'm telling you, the lusts of the flesh that are out there, the devil deceives people with those things all the time, but God's design is the best. The sexual temptations that are out there, they're real, they're always going to be around, but I'm here today to tell you that doing things the way God said is always going to be more fulfilling than what the world is lying to you about. And I have seen so much evidence of that in my own life. I've seen the people who have given in to every temptation. They're not happy. They're not satisfied. They are miserable. It is so much better doing things God's way. But it's during these times, after high school, going into your 20s, when the temptation, it's going to be strong. And there is a time in your life where Satan, he's going to come after you, and he's going to come after you hard. Don't listen. In verse 13, we shall find all precious substance. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. And let me tell you, Satan makes a lot of big promises if you team up with him, but he's always lying. He makes things sound so good, but Satan never delivers on the things he promises. He is a liar. Your flesh is a liar. Hollywood, they are liars. They do not know what they're talking about. They do know what they're talking about, but they're trying to destroy you. They're just lying about what their actual agenda is. Satan knows exactly what it is you think you want, and he will always offer it to you. But what you think you want, what you think it will produce, it never produces. The lust of the flesh never produces what you think it will, and that's where you just have to trust God. So it says, my son, walk not thou in the way with them. Refrain thy foot from their path. For their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird, and they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives. So are the ways of everyone that is greedy of gain, which taketh away the life of the owners thereof. And let me tell you, Satan is going to lay traps for you, and you're going to need wisdom not to fall from them. And the traps are endless that are out there. I can't get up here today and tell you about all the traps. I can't tell you how they all look. Satan changes them up, but at the end of the day, if you have wisdom, you'll recognize them when you see them. If you have a fear of God, if you're close to God, if you walk with God, you'll see you'll see these things. And so this next part, this is what you really need to get a hold of. Look what it says in verse 20. Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. She crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates in the city, she uttereth her word, saying, how long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity, and scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge? Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you, and I will make known my words unto you. Notice here that wisdom is available for those who are looking for it. In fact, the amount of wisdom that is available today, it's amazing anybody drinks. With all the videos that are out there of people doing stupid things while they're drunk. You can just search drunk guy, whatever, and you can find a fortune of just thousands of videos of people doing stupid things while drunk. But yet people still get drunk. You can see all these videos of people out there that are high on drugs and foolish things they do, embarrassing things they do, and yet young people still go and they experiment with drugs. We see all these things. You see Hollywood. We all got to see what it's really like for Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and all that. And yet, young people, they will still look at people like them as role models and try to follow their patterns and follow the things that they're doing, even though wisdom is crying out. And let me tell you, wisdom screamed a lot of things in that Johnny Depp trial. And one of the things that screamed is, man, don't just go after the woman because she looks good. Make sure can you imagine living with somebody like that? I can't even imagine how horrible that would be. Yet people don't learn these lessons. Even though wisdom is screaming, do not drink. It is screaming, do not smoke. Do not do drugs. It is screaming that, yet people, they don't pay attention to it. They don't listen to it. But it's available for those looking at. People who don't have wisdom don't have it because they don't want it. If you're not wise today, it's because you don't want to be wise. You don't have to have high intellect. It's not about having a high IQ. It's not about that. It's not about being a straight A student. Maybe you weren't a straight A student, but you can still have wisdom. If you just have a little bit of common sense, if you just need to pay attention to what wisdom is saying and do things like looking at those who are a little farther down the road than you, looking at those who are a lot farther down the road than you. You want to know where I learned a lot of wisdom too? Was when I worked at McDonald's. I hated that job, but let me tell you something. I learned some wisdom there. You know why? Because I worked with a lot of people who were a little further down the road than me, and it's like, I'm not going down that road. I'm not following that path, because I saw where it ended, and I could go on and on about just things I saw, things I observed. I had temptations like other teenagers do, but at the same time, I learned real quick, this is why my parents told me to stay away from that stuff. This isn't pretty. I don't want anything to do with this. Now now look at verse 24. I want you to notice the harshness of this next passage. But understand, this is the result of not listening to wisdom. So I don't like this next passage. It's kind of mean. But listen, not listening to wisdom has consequences. It says, because I have called and ye refused, I have stretched out my hand and no man regarded, but ye have set at naught all my counsel with none of my reproof. I also, wisdom's talking here, I will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh as desolation and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you, then shall they call upon me, and I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. For they would none of my counsel. They despised all my reproof. Therefore shall they eat the fruit of their own way and be filled with their own devices. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. But whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely and shall be quiet from the fear of evil. And let me tell you, I have never laughed at somebody because of the situation they were in. I would not laugh, and I've had people come to me many times. I've been to the houses of people before. I went to the house of somebody one time who had gotten involved in drugs, and as a result of the drugs, he lost his job and got himself in all kinds of financial problems, and he's like wanting me to help him out. It's like, dude, you have no clue how poor I am. But this guy was in a mess, had no clue what to do, was way behind on his bills. He was about to get thrown out of his house because he was so far behind on his rent. Couldn't get another job because of all the things he had on his criminal record. And you know, I tried to be nice. I didn't say anything mean to him. But the reality is, wisdom was laughing at this guy. It's like, hey, you should have known better. You didn't pay attention to any of those say no to drug PSAs from the 90s? Remember that song, saying no to drugs is being cool and all that kind of stuff? What were they trying to do? Trying to teach us to stay away from it. This guy didn't do it. He went down this path. Everybody said, don't go, don't go. Wisdom said, don't go, don't go. He went down it. And now he's in a mess. And it's like life is just going on and he's just suffering and it's like everything's against him. Yeah, wisdom was laughing at him is what was going on. He was being mocked. His fear has now come. He's going through all these things. He's got a girlfriend. He's got kids that he got her pregnant with that he's trying to figure out how to take care of. And yet he's not able to do it. And his life is a mess. He's in turmoil. He doesn't know what to do. And wisdom is laughing at him. And understand, if you just despise the counsel, the instruction that your parents have given, if you despise the things that you learn in this church, the things that the Word of God says, one of these days, you are going to be suffering greatly. I wish there was just some way to just help all the young people in here see just how much trouble they can get into. Now that you're 18, the amount of ways that you can get in trouble and destroy your life, they are off the charts. That's why it's good to take your kids out soul winning with you. Let them see some of these houses. Let them see the way some people are living. And then you know what? Instruct them on, hey, this is why they're there. Did you notice this house that smelled horrible, that was disgusting? Don't let the world fool you. It's not just that way because they're poor. Because did you notice beer cans everywhere? They can afford beer. But let me tell you what alcohol does to you. Alcohol is going to make you lazy. Alcohol is going to make it easier for you to ignore all these other problems that are around you. Most of us, the thought of not going to work stresses us out because we have bills and things we have to pay. And so we can't even enjoy being lazy. I can't enjoy being lazy. I've got things I need to do. I've got things I've got to accomplish. So I can't enjoy being lazy. But if I took some alcohol, I probably could enjoy being lazy. I could probably feel good about it. You know, if my wife starts nagging me because we're not, paying the bills and the kids aren't being taken care of, that's no fun. I can't enjoy that. But if I drink enough, I won't notice. It won't bother me. But is it going to make the problems go away? Is it going to help the bills get paid? No. And eventually, problems are going to pile up. And before you know it, I've got a huge mess. So this isn't to scare you, but it is important you understand just how much decisions you make can mess up the rest of your life. And you can really make a train wreck of things right now. And you probably will if you don't listen to wisdom. You definitely will if you don't listen to wisdom. But even if you don't, even if you're like, I'm freaked out by all the unknowns. Hey, just fear God. Follow instruction. Seek counsel. If you do all these things, you'll be fine. Solomon understood just how crucial this time was for his son. And parents, we need to understand how important these years are, and we need to start preparing for them early. And kids, and just understand too, say, well, what if I just accidentally make a bad choice? Well, if it really is an accident, if you really were doing the best and fearing God and trying to follow your parents' instructions, there's a wonderful thing called grace, where God can fix it, God can restore it. But where the cruelty is, where the laughter comes, is when you were told and you rejected. When you were told and you said no. When you openly rebel against God, when you get defiant against God, you're going to eat the fruit of your ways. So I don't think you need to go around just freaked out, just terrified of every decision that you make. No, do the best you can in the fear of the Lord and just, follow the leading of the Holy Spirit the best you can. Follow instructions, and if you do that, you'll do fine. So with that, let's pray. Dear Lord, I thank you so much for all the young people in this church, and I pray especially for our graduates tonight. I pray you'll help them as they make this transition, Lord, as they are getting closer and closer and are becoming adults. I pray you'll help them to understand that we all are always in need of instruction, of guidance, of wisdom, of counsel. We're always obeying somebody, and Lord, if they get anything from this, help them to just keep a healthy fear of you in their life, and I pray you'll help them be very successful and bless them in great ways. In your name we pray. Amen.